Okay, hi everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Alex DeSena. I work for the Dane County Planning Division. I'm a housing planner, and we're thrilled to have you all here. This is the Regional Housing Network meeting for February, and we'll be having presentations on preserving housing stock through energy efficiency investments. So we've got three great presentations for you today, and we'll learn a lot about municipal and local efforts to make those energy efficiency upgrades. First, we will have Claire Olikshark to present with Lorene Gage on the Elevate Efficiency Navigator program. And Claire is from Sustain Dane, and Lorene Gage is from the city of Fitchburg, and they will discuss their partnership with this program. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. So I have the opportunity of kind of sharing a little bit about this partnership and also introducing Claire. So again, my name is Lorene Gage. I am the Housing Initiatives and Programs Specialist for the city of Fitchburg. I've been there for about 8 months now. So let me tell you a little bit about this project. So Claire Olisic is the executive director for Sustain Dane, and her organization leads initiatives focused on sustainability and community resilience. They also work closely with governments, businesses, and residents to promote energy efficiency and environmental stewardship. So this program was launched in June of 2024 alongside with my colleague Joyce Frey. And the focus of this program is to enhance housing quality and affordability with promoting sustainability, and also providing tangible benefits for both landlords and tenants through cost-saving measures and safer living conditions. And the focus is 4 neighborhoods that we refer to as healthy neighborhoods, and many of the families are just facing barriers. So those 4 neighborhoods are Belmar, Duns Marsh, Jamestown, North Fish Hatchery Road, and Southdale. So the initial funding piece of this was an allocation of $390,000 from the Affordable Housing Fund. And then we had some additional funding allocated for 2025. So it's designed to assist 4 to 6 unit rental units with tenants that are earning below 80% AMI. And the assessments kind of focused on energy efficiency improvements, fire and safety evaluations, structure and operational enhancements to housing units, were those kind of main focus areas. And so Claire will kind of share a little bit about the program, and then also kind of that partnership, the community engagement piece that's really important. And that's the collaboration with the property owners and tenants. Ongoing assessments and improvements based on initial findings, and then also the engagement with community partners to kind of expand the program's impact. So with that, I'll hand it over to Claire.
Thank you, Lorene. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. All right, and we're going to view this in presentation mode. All right, can we see that, everyone? Yes? Okay, great. So as Lorene said, I'm Claire Olekshak. I'm the Executive Director of Sustain Dane, and I'm going to focus on our Efficiency Navigator program in the Fitchburg community. This program began in the city of Madison in our region, and also is operating in Middleton as well as in Fitchburg. We're partnered with Elevate, and Abby Corso, who's on this call, is part of the Elevate team. She's going to be presenting later on some of the other work that they're doing. So what is the Efficiency Navigator program? So what this program is doing is looking at small to medium apartment housing and helping it become more efficient and resilient while we're reducing those operating costs to remain affordable. We're really looking at that intersection between housing resilience, equity, and climate change. For the Fitchburg community, we were able to build off of the Healthy Neighborhoods plan that they had developed back in 2019. And this really aligned with their goals for that plan, which is how we came together. Also, what was unique about in Fitchburg is that they were using TIF funding to help fund this. So the closure of 3 TIF districts provided funding to reinvest into affordable housing. And we were one of 3 projects. And I believe, Larry, the other 2, one is a rent-to-own program and one is just building of more affordable housing. So we're the investment in the current affordable housing piece that they're using this funding for. In our other communities, we have had philanthropy funding that's helped support this. We've received grants from the Office of Energy Innovation, from community block grants, a number of different granting organizations, as well as we've had capital dollars from the municipal governments itself that have funded them. So impacts of the program: preserving affordable housing, increasing climate resilience, health and comfort and safety in the homes is really important. Looking at promoting equity and supporting the local economy as well. And that oftentimes that means around workforce development and engaging the diverse workforce in the contractors that we're working with for the program. So here are kind of 2 case studies to give you an overview of what we've been able to accomplish with the program. Between Madison and Middleton, we've worked in over 177 units across 44 buildings. The one building here on the left is an example of a building where we had a good amount of weatherization work. There was sidewall insulation, chimney liners, health and safety, air sealing, boiler tune-up, and that project was able to, you can see here, kind of avoid $13,000 of cost. The CO2 emissions that were reduced and what that means in terms of vehicle miles traveled, with a cost of around $25K for that project. On the right-hand side, you can see a project that included weatherization. Also, this was an opportunity to install air source heat pumps. There was electric baseboard in this building. So this one had an even higher savings amount for those 4 residents in that building. This is an owner testimony we like to share. The owner here, Melvin Boone, talking about how this has been really important for the residents in his building, making things more comfortable and saving that energy and that money. We've also had really nice feedback from some of the residents about how they are noticing the improvement in their units staying cool when it's really hot out, their electric bills going down. Also, some of those other impacts of having weatherization, like it's quieter. So if you live near a road, the highway noise wouldn't be so loud. And also a positive relationship about how noticing that we matter, we're important, and that we're being treated well to improve the places that we're living. So in Fitchburg, as Lorene said, we launched this program June 17th. And what we did is we opened up an application and did mailings directly to a subset of owners in Fitchburg that met the criteria that had been identified, as well as did a really broad, public announcement. They have their Fitchburg, I think it's Fact TV we were on, notifying, press releases and all of that. We did intakes for the buildings that applied to make sure they met the criteria, understand about their buildings, then went out for on-site assessments, have assessment reports per building, and about 2 months later then put together a prioritization survey based on what we were seeing for the elected officials in Fitchburg, for them to give us feedback on how do you want us to prioritize this measure? Do you want us to do the measures that have the highest energy savings first? Do you want us to do the buildings that have the highest savings overall? We had about maybe 6 different ways that we asked them to give us feedback. After we got that, we reviewed the reports with owners, we analyzed the data for implementation, and then presented to the committee of the whole, which is what this presentation is, to kind of show you how we were able to analyze those buildings and put together the recommendation for Fitchburg that we are now implementing. So across Fitchburg, there are 11 building owners that submitted applications for 15 buildings, which is about 120 units. And you could see the 4 neighborhoods that Lorene mentioned, how that broke up for which neighborhoods the buildings came from and the total number of units. We went through in this application process, talking about, maintenance that maybe they'd already done or that they needed to be done, making sure that the properties were in good standing with the city. And then the other thing is letting the property owners know that as part of the conditions for participating in this, they would need to commit to maintaining their rents affordable based on the HUD fair market rent value for at least 5 years post implementation. We got out and did the on-site assessments. So in addition to energy efficiency, which you kind of see as the first 2, 3, kind of 4 items, we did look at fire suppression. We made notes about the exterior building conditions, and then oftentimes health and safety would be identified through one of those other measures. So some of those could be if there was mold that was there, if we noticed there may be signs of gas leaks going on, and the other things such as asthma triggers that might have been identified. So after all that, 10 buildings were selected to move forward, which is 8 owners across 76 units in Fitchburg. This is kind of an example of what a report could look like. So we look at annual electrical and natural gas consumption in the units. We do a per measure estimate of what the cost savings would be, the cost of that measure, and then provide a fairly detailed narrative about both what were recommended and then other measures that maybe didn't come to the top but could be good opportunities. We also provide details on equipment because not everyone is familiar with the type of equipment that can be recommended, such as air source heat pumps. So we go through explaining that and answering any questions that an owner might have. This was an example of how we were asked the Common Council, the mayor, and a couple other committees, which 2 factors are most important to you in prioritizing. And we heard back that residents being the space heating utility account owner was most important. So what that means is that residents would get the most savings was a priority. You can see kind of the other questions we asked, which was really, involving them in how we decided what we wanted to move forward with. So of the total buildings, 41 measures were identified. 9 of the buildings had weatherization opportunities. 8 of them had window replacement opportunities. And there were 2 buildings that had no measures that were identified. So the total cost savings across the buildings was about $89,000 over a 10-year period, plus the health and safety. And you can see the other savings for CO2 and vehicle miles traveled. We analyze the data based on all of these different factors that we have this, we can report back on it, and then we can also continue to refine overall the impact that we're having. So this recommended scenario that we brought forward, we at this time did have HERE rebates as something we were anticipating using. So the total cost scenario that we brought forward was about $304,000, which we would anticipate was about a $50,000 resident savings over the 10-year, $19,000 for owner savings. And then you can see the CO2, $307,000. It was 26 measures total across those 76 units in the 10 buildings. And we have our partner, our community partner for this is Joining Forces for Families. And when we were talking with this, they said, we're really interested in how many vulnerable residents are also living in these buildings. So we also wanted to note that there were 18 households that had seniors over 65 years old, and there were 14 households that had children, had families with children that were under 18 years old that were going to be able to benefit from this work. And then this goes through kind of some of the recommended scenarios. So you can kind of see what it might look like for one individual building, doing attic insulation, room doors insulation, ventilation, which we have always been including when we do the weatherization. So as we tighten up the building, we want to make sure there's proper ventilation. This is often bath fans, and then sometimes also in the kitchen, and refrigerators for these 2 buildings. The bottom building also had an opportunity for air source heat pumps as part of the savings. So kind of look through kind of similar measures in different configurations that were identified for the different buildings. Some of these had windows that were identified, pipe insulation, different roof types and what that means. These 2 buildings we're actually doing some additional testing on before going forward with the contract because of the unique situation with the roofs. Genoan and then Williamson's Way, kind of similar. So kind of at the end of this, we look at all the summary of the benefits across all of the buildings, and use that to go forward with contractor quotes. So we're getting, the contractor quotes have come in. We have had 2 situations where there was mold remediation that was also identified with some additional contractor work. So we're including that as part of the health and safety work. We then brought this to council. It's going through the council process right now for approval. With that approval, we would move into what we call a 3-party agreement, which is an agreement between the owner, the contractor, and Sustain Dane that outlines this is the work, approvals to do it, payment for that, and the affordability commitment. We also then, at the completion of work, do a review of it, and then pay directly to the contractor, have owner survey and resident surveys as well. There is an email that goes out to the residents that going to summarize the work that we're planning to do in the building so that they are aware of this, understand, kind of the goals of the program, and ask for their feedback. 1, if they have questions, or 2, if there's a way that the contractors can work around their schedule. There's a building we worked in Madison, for instance, that had a mom with several kids who said, "Great, you're doing this work. You cannot start until my kids are out the house and on their way to school." So we said, okay, sounds good. So we worked with the contractor schedule to make sure to accommodate that. We've had other people that, are working from home and, want to, again, work around that schedule and make it as less impactful as possible. So for the Fitchburg Efficiency Navigator program, what we're anticipating is about 76 households total taking advantage of improved affordable housing, about $70,000 in energy saving costs, $307,000 in CO2 emission reduction, and that equates to around 763,000 vehicle miles traveled that will be avoided with the program. So that is a brief summary of what the work that we've been doing in Fitchburg. And I'm happy to answer questions now, or if you want to save them until later. Also, of course, Lorene, feel free to jump in if there's some other areas you want to add to or want me to talk about.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do questions now. I know that you have to head out a little early. So if anyone has questions, please just go ahead and jump in, can unmute or put it in the chat. We do have one question in the chat that I can read in the meantime until someone's ready. But what does it mean that 2 buildings had no measures identified? Were they already in good shape, or did they not qualify for some other reason?
Yeah, it meant they were in good shape. Yeah, they. I can't remember if Project Home had been there earlier or what the kind of what the review had put together, but based on kind of our standards and the projected savings that could happen, they did not move forward because they didn't have a need.
I have a question. Claire, thank you so much, and Claire and Lorraine, thank you so much for this presentation. This is fantastic. Really exciting details, and yeah, really is a great model and a guide for the rest of us. Could you talk a little bit about, you said something about your Joining Forces with Families partnership. What is that?
Yeah, so Joining Forces with Families is a local nonprofit that works in Fitchburg and oftentimes in Madison too, working with residents often for housing needs. So we brought them into the process early on and wanted to explain to them, what our intent was, how did this work, and hear from them. First of all, what they thought would be most beneficial to residents. So, as we were going through, what are we going to be looking at these in assessments? How can we be really conscious of what residents might be needing and benefiting from? And then when we got to this point of the presentation I just presented, shared that with them early on, got feedback from them. Like I said, they want to say, okay, break it down even more. Seniors, residents, they have kids, that kind of stuff. And then we just talked with them a couple weeks ago. They're going to help us craft the email that we're sending out to the residents with information about the upgrades. And they've just been a really great partner along the way. And I think it's really helpful to have them, and we've worked with other community partners as well, who can be a resource, if people have questions, and also be a resource to us to make sure we're doing this work in a way that is meaningful and important.
Yeah, and a trusted partner because the residents know them.
Yeah.
Yeah, great entree. That's excellent. So I'm just trying to make sure. So are you going into buildings and only working on a few of the units? Is it just as needed? Like, so, or is it all of the units in the building are actually getting the upgrade? Yeah.
Oftentimes it's measures that are addressing the whole home, right? So the attic insulation, right, and air
Okay.
sealing is addressing the whole home, for
Okay.
instance. We're currently working in a building that has boiler issue situation where thermostats in different units need different
Right.
measures. So we do some work as it's needed, but really it's the whole building that tends to have the most impact.
Okay, great. And these are, well, right, Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative, for folks who don't know, is an initiative that Fitchburg identified many years ago, lower income communities, you know, that needed or were lacking, I guess, investment. Lorraine, you have to describe the program more, you know, articulately than I would, but I know that they were identified as areas for redevelopment or, you know, in need of additional resources. So that's a perfect partnership because those locations were already identified, right? So typically, if you go into a community, is that the case, or do you actually do the analysis yourself where you're like mapping the older units? How is it that you typically find them, or is there probably no typical? I don't know. Yeah.
Lorraine, did you want to add something?
Nope, you
Okay.
you can take that one, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Fitchburg, we aligned with the Healthy Neighborhoods program. In some of the other communities, we've used census data, community survey data to identify neighborhoods that have, you know, incomes below 80% or 60% threshold. We use kind of that as a mapping tool. And then there's, you know, some additional kind of assessor data that we're looking at and are hoping to develop, you know, some tools that other communities can use across the board. And Abby's team has been really, really leading the way on this too. So if Abby wants to jump in now and share about some of the mapping, we welcome that.
We're kind of in the process of redoing mapping, but like Claire said, we look at you know, census at the tract and block level and try and target by income unless, you know, there are specific neighborhoods that we're looking at, like with, you know, like TIF districts. We'd like to get more precise mapping, you know, and more precise targeting, but and so we're working on that as part of, you know, kind of hopefully 2025 work.
Right, right. Well, it's wonderful that there was that synthesis with the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative. So does the funding that you get, is that on the front end or is it reimbursable, or how does the finance piece work?
So the funding we have, we are able to 100% cover the cost of these measures, which has been really important because a lot of these landlords are, you know, only able to focus on, you know, the next thing that maybe breaks or, you know, just what's right there. So this is work that otherwise would likely not move forward. We also, you know, I mentioned, have identified situations where there's mold in the attic because the, you know, dryer was venting there and no one knew. And this is also stuff that otherwise wouldn't have been identified if it wasn't for this program, and that we were checking this and going there and being able to support it. In that situation, the whole roof actually has to be replaced, which will be the owner is going to be paying for that replacement. So there's other, you know, oftentimes, you know, you'll see kind of the larger projects, there might be an owner needs to help provide some funding, but for the core measures that we're doing, that funding is covered.
Thank you so much, Claire and Lorraine. We have a couple more questions in the chat that I just want to make sure we get to. Kurt Paulson has a couple of questions. His first one is, when you identify the cost of the project, is that all project costs, including the assessment and the consultant's fees to manage the project, or just the bill from the contractors for upgrades and repairs?
So it's just in the assessment report, it's just the fees for the contractor upgrades and repairs. And that's somewhat intentional because we don't get to all of the measures sometimes. So having them listed out, we're hoping is also helping provide a roadmap for those owners if and when they have opportunities to do the other work.
Great. And then do you have any evidence that would tell us if the landlords had to do these upgrades themselves and needed to finance that and therefore raise the rent to pay those upgrades off? How much would they have had to raise the rent?
I like the question, Kurt. I think you have a spreadsheet in your head that you're starting to create. In our experience, these aren't upgrades that are on the top list for the landlords to do. So, if they had to do them, that's, kind of hard to really think through. But yes, you would have to raise rent to make, to pay for the work that you have to do. I mean, that's what would need to happen. We've also seen that financing has not been successful. We did work with a very low interest rate financing tool for a couple of years for some of the larger items that we weren't able to cover. And that was not something that any of the owners took on and decided they'd want to take on debt.
So there's additional cost savings for residents on top of the energy costs.
Yes, that's a good way to think about it, right?
Mhm.
It's also the savings of not having to have the rent raised for the
Right.
measures.
That's great. And then one more question in the chat from Becky Binns. It sounds like there were a lot of landlords who were interested in Fitchburg. Has that been the case in all of the communities you work in? What are the best outreach methods you found to connect with landlords?
Yeah, it has been the case. The direct mailings has actually been one of the most successful tools recently. So kind of, based on the different criteria we've identified and using assessor data to do a mailing and have that mailing come both from Sustain Dane and the municipality. I feel like that's been really beneficial. The other one, we did a press conference, I think 2023 when we completed that work, or 2022. So just general media, that was fairly successful. We had a larger bump in people applying, and then people recommending to someone else. So I hope all of you on this call, if you know anyone that has a 2 up to about 16 unit rental affordable housing unit, that you will tell them about this and have them connect with us.
I have a couple of quick last questions. So if someone were to contact you with the 10 unit, do you have to go out and fundraise, or do you have a pot of money, or is it kind of like let's all work together and figure this out kind of thing, or?
We can go to a larger units depending on which community we're in.
Okay.
So a 10 unit, you could be fine. Yeah.
Right. Is there a certain amount that you want to have come from the community, or is it just the money is from all different places, or?
Right. Oh, always can use more funding.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
And
yes,
then-
and yes.
And then you mentioned the 5-year, you asked the landlords to keep the rent at current rental rates, or?
The HUD fair market rate. So, if that goes up, then it can
Okay.
go up. Sometimes it's gone down, but we just, we say, we want you to be in line with that.
And is that in writing, or is that a gentleman's agreement?
No, that's in
agreement.
writing. That's part of the 3-party agreement. So it's part of, in exchange for this work that's going to be done.
Great.
Quickly, one more question in the chat. I just want to make sure we get to everything. What are the steps you take to decide which towns to work with? Madison, Middleton, Fitchburg, where next?
Yeah. So, with Madison, lots of interest, a lot of alignment with their goals as a city. And then we worked together to apply for a grant that was able to kind of get that initial funding to start the work. So I think a lot of it's really driven by, is there alignment in the goals and of the municipality to do this work? And then is there funding available? And funding can come in different ways, right? So it could be that grant funding, it could be capital funding, it could be TIF funding like this. I'm hoping Sun Prairie will be next. We're looking at a grant application with them. So fingers crossed for that could be the next community.
So if a community is interested, should they reach out to you or?
Yes,
Okay.
please do.
Wonderful.
We'd love to talk about it.
Thank you again so much. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more as in Abby's presentation, but we would love to hear from the Chief Strategy Officer for Elevate, Abigail Corso, right now, to talk about their programming. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm going to do a little bit of a continuation of Efficiency Navigator. I want to do some kind of deep dives into a couple buildings to really illustrate the type of work that's possible in affordable housing. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Screen 2. And that would be the wrong screen. Can you all see, it says project development process?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because that's not what I'm seeing on my screen, but as long as you can all see it, that's great. I just wanted to kind of start here. This is just like an overview of the process we take with Efficiency Navigator when we're starting to kind of look at a building once it's kind of come in through the portal and it seems like a good candidate. We'll do an energy assessment. And I just want to point out a couple things here. We look at health and safety, and sometimes we look at indoor air quality and decarbonization for these buildings. And then when we're thinking of what the measures are, we also look at energy burden, because we want to make sure that we don't increase utility bills for residents as we're, especially if we're doing like a decarbonization measure like heat pumps. We work with the contractors on scopes of work. When we actually work really closely with our contractors to refine the system design and the ECMs. And then we kind of walk through the construction management process with the owners, and kind of throughout, we try and kind of have some resident education and engagement, especially if we're putting like new equipment in like heat pumps. So I just want to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive on a building that came through our Efficiency Navigator program in Madison. And this building was a little bit of a special case. So we really like rounded up some funding from the Urban Sustainability Directors Network and OEI, the Office of Energy Innovation, because this was a building where the owner wanted to really add heat pumps to the building. So it had gas furnaces in it, and they really wanted to switch over from gas, put in heat pumps, and then add solar to offset the additional cooling load that the heat pumps would bring to the building. So the property is it's on Leland Avenue in Madison. It's a 4-unit building. We see these buildings like everywhere in all of our communities. They have very small common areas, and then there's 4 units in the building, 2 down and 2 up. This building is individually metered for electric and for gas. So it had gas heating, domestic hot water, and then gas stoves, and it had window AC units. So for the energy wonks, this is, we did a deep dive in how much energy and gas this was using. And it was about $6,000 a year, but that was split amongst four tenants. So those, each tenant was, paying roughly, anywhere between $1,000 and $1,400 a year in energy for their unit. So, and what this owner really wanted to do is they wanted to take out the gas boilers, and they wanted to take out the domestic hot water heaters because those were at end of life anyway, so they were going to have to replace them. They wanted to replace them with air source heat pumps that would cover heating and cooling, because this building only had window units. There was no central air conditioning in it. And then they wanted to add solar so that we were offsetting the extra load from the heat pumps. And our goals were to maximize the savings for the tenants because they were all paying for their own utilities. We wanted to lower the operating costs for the property owner, and then kind of minimize the cost of the project so that we could cover it with the funds we had. So we just finished the solar install last week, which is exciting. But this building, the full upgrade with solar and heat pumps, domestic hot water, was about $162,000. So it is a higher number than we see in most of the buildings that come through the Efficiency Navigator. But we did some extra fundraising because we really wanted to use this building as a demonstration to show, here's a typical 4-unit building. it's naturally occurring affordable housing, and it's on gas. And we really wanted to kind of use this as a demonstration for this owner, but for other owners, to really show that, you know, these older buildings can be decarbonized. So our findings, this was kind of a unique building because because it was individually metered, we needed to, we got into kind of a protracted policy conversation about the meter situation, for the heat pumps and the solar. We really wanted to consolidate all of the heating and cooling and then the solar into a central meter. Unfortunately, because of our policy environment, we were not allowed to do that. And so we had to retain the individual meter structures for the electric load. Our workaround was to put 4 individual solar systems on the building. So every unit has its own like little solar system that covers the cost of the added cost of the heat pump. Not ideal. It increased the cost, you know, of the install, but it did achieve our objective of reducing the energy bills for the residents. And just our projected energy savings, depending on the unit, range anywhere from around $300 a year to $600 a year for those residents. Knowing that we've just added cooling to the building as well. I'm just going to go through another case study really quickly. This is not a building that came through the Efficiency Navigator. It's a 40-unit building that is was centrally had central heating. It was electric resistant heat. So this owner was probably paying upwards of $40,000 a year in heating bills. So this was a large upgrade that was funded in part by the Office of Energy Innovation, but also the owner put in some of their own capital. And we did lighting and weatherization, because the first thing we do in any building is the energy efficiency measures. We added heat pumps to this building. So it took it off of a very expensive electric resistant heat and put it onto a less expensive, more efficient heat pumps, which also added cooling. This was another instance that the building did not have cooling. And then we added a solar system onto this building to offset the cost, the additional electric load. So here's what our heat pumps look like on the outside of this building. This building is was energized in November of last year. These are the heads in each unit for the heat pumps. And this building on this picture of the windows, you could see we did a considerable amount of air sealing around these windows, because there was no insulation in this building. So a little wonky, but when you look at the electric costs, just since November, the owner saved $5,000 in electricity. You look at this little kind of line graph, you can kind of see the red is 2023 into 2024. You can kind of see where the bills start going down when we've added the heat pumps to it. And then here in our first, we haven't finished 2024 yet. You can kind of see the numbers going down even further as we're putting the solar on. So we're expecting once we finish the solar, we'll probably have up to 35% savings with this particular building. That is all I have. I am happy to take any questions on these case studies, and I'll be sending them to you as part of the as a follow-up.
Thank you so much, Abby. That was amazing. We have one question in the chat. Did MG&E allow the solar arrays to be sized to meet the projected load, or did they limit the arrays to meet only the historic load?
So it was a historic load that we had to use. We wanted, there is some technology that allows like load shifting, where, for instance, for multifamily building, where this would be really important is if you have, say, a single, one person living in one unit, but you have a family in another unit, and then those units turn over, and now, you might have only one person in that was a family unit. Load shifting would allow the system to adjust to the usage in the building, but we were not allowed to put that technology in, so we had to kind of just size it based on our modeling. But hopefully in the future we'll be able to use that type of technology.
Other questions for Abby?
Abby, are you doing this kind of analysis behind all of the other, the efficiency navigator program, or is this just a deeper dive? You are, okay, so this is now.
No, we do this. This one was the 4-unit was a little bit more than we usually do, only because this particular owner wanted to kind of really like push the envelope, if you will. But what we look at in every building that comes through the navigator, we do an assessment, and we really want to look at the projected energy savings, like for the owner, and do the analysis on energy burden for the units.
What is the current life of, like, for example, the solar array that you just installed?
So 20 to 25 years is what we could expect, but there's been solar on buildings for much longer than that. Early adopters.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Thanks again. I want to make sure we have enough time for our last presenter, but if you have other questions, put them in the chat. We can try to get to them after. So next we have the City of Monona Director of Planning and Community Development, Doug Plowman, to talk about Monona's efforts to upgrade energy efficiency.
Can I just say one thing real quick? If you are not on the newsletter list or don't get our program announcements and you found out about this through another vehicle, please put your email in the chat so we can make sure you get a copy of this presentation afterwards. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm gonna keep my camera off while I'm doing the presentation. I'm on Wi-Fi and found it to be a little unstable, but once Q&A opens up, I'll close this out. Hopefully, can everybody see my screen, the PowerPoint screen?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I'll be running through the Renew Monona loan program that we have here in the city. I'll give a little bit of a background to it, and a little bit of background to the city as well, just if you're not familiar. An overview of the project, some examples of kind of funding that the city has awarded, and then really get into the lessons learned and some of the opportunities as well. So just by way of background, Monona itself is on the lakes of Lake Monona, just here in the Madison area. It is a population of just over 8,600 people and 3.3 square miles, and about 10 minutes away from the isthmus, so still very close to downtown. And we also, one of the things here is that we are completely landlocked, so redevelopment is sort of the only way that we can continue to grow. And you can see here on the right that we have kind of a land use map that shows kind of the different areas. The Renew Monona program is going to be focused on the low density residential, which you can see is kind of to the west here, kind of closer to the lake, and away from our major corridors, but established neighborhoods, that sort of have an older housing stock. So getting onto that housing stock, you can see here using data from the 5-year ACS from 2021, you can see kind of the distribution of the age of the housing stock that we have here in the city. So a lot of this housing is older, especially as compared to Dane County, and you can see over 40% of that is from the 20 years between 1940 and 1959. So older housing and smaller units, kind of as was the trend back then. And of course, a little bit different to what we're seeing built today, and sort of that shift that has taken place. So we were seeing, and we have kind of a larger proportion of those ranch units, maybe 3-bed, 1-bath, so a little smaller, still on good sized lots, but maybe not sort of as so appealing to potential buyers, and they may be looking elsewhere. So the Renew Monona Loan Program is a housing stock renewal program that was funded by the extension of a TIF district coming to the end of its life to further the goals of affordable housing. So the original intent was to further the affordability and attractiveness of purchasing in Monona. And you can see I've kind of included an extract here from the city's comprehensive plan from back in 2016. So the policy for this is we have 250,000 each year that we are able to loan, and I'll sort of get into some of the details of the breakdown of that in just a minute. But the goal there is that this is a 10-year loan, and so that this becomes a revolving loan fund that continues. We do have 9 existing districts, and we actually just created a few more this past year. So sort of as the closure of these takes place, it kind of continues to assist the fund as well. So the program itself, some of the eligibility details I think are pretty interesting and a little different than you may find with others. So this is based, the eligibility is based specifically and only on the property value and not on income or anything like that. So it's something from a staff perspective that's a lot easier to test for. When somebody calls up and says, am I interested or am I eligible for this project or this program? We can just go to the Access Dane and very quickly be able to tell them, what the answer of that is. So the eligibility for this is 120% of the median assessed value within the city. And the loan terms for this are a 2% loan with that 10-year term, and that would be repayable after 10 years with annual payments, or repayable at sale or refinance. And the way this is structured, it goes as a second mortgage on the property as well. One thing to point out is that the city portion and the percentage of the loan will be no more than 50% or the maximum loan amount. The city does contact the existing lenders as well, given that this is a second mortgage on the property, just to confirm that the applicant is in good standing, of course, with their existing mortgage as well. So as far as the process, you can see here on the right an extract from one of the staff reports that we do for each of these applications. Loan requests are kind of put into 2 different buckets. So the first is loan requests less than $50,000. These have been delegated to city staff review, then Finance and Personnel Committee is sort of the ultimate review body. Those that are larger, greater than 50,000, are reviewed by staff, taken to the city's Community Development Authority, and then again to Finance and Personnel. That was a change that was made. We have had a real range of applications here that have sort of ranged from a couple $1,000s all the way through to the maximum loan amount, which is $75,000. So it was sort of for the city to be a little more agile, to be a little more responsive to some of these requests. Taking that extra meeting out with the CDA was helpful. They only meet monthly, and it was sort of creating a little bit of a delay here as well. Then staff prepares the paperwork and ultimately distribute the check after the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. And again, sort of some of the details there, this is all kind of done in-house. At one point, we did work with sort of a partner lender and with a bank that sort of assisted with some of those things. So, we have kind of the templates and such available, but certainly would, I think, welcome the opportunity to partner with another local institution again. So as far as the project eligibility, there's a lot of different uses for funding and sort of different categories that can be applied for. So certainly, the focus of today's presentation, renewable energy, energy efficient upgrades, but we also have first-time home purchase, as well as a first-generation home buyer option that was added in quite recently. Environmental remediation, but probably the most common, I would say, is the major rehab category. And so that would be, the addition of any living space, the conversion of maybe a sort of unconditioned space, or finishing a basement into a living space, adding that extra bedroom, bathroom, that kind of thing. What I would say is that you do see a lot of overlap here. You're only eligible to apply for one category. So there's oftentimes when folks will apply for the major rehab category, but of course there are energy efficient upgrades components to the project that are kind of rolled in together. And part of the staff report is every request outside of the first time home purchase or first generation home buyer would be that we are looking at that, are these improvements being made? Are they energy efficient? Do they have that component to the project as well? So the max loan amounts, as mentioned, do vary by category. And the largest that we have here is the major home rehab, topping out at 75,000 for the city contribution. Again, that's a 50-50 match. So could be up to 150,000 or more. But of course, that percentage would begin to decrease. Moving on, so some of the typical projects that you would see, finishing basements, adding bedrooms, bathrooms, the expansion of the main living space. We also have seen one application that was putting in new windows for the entire house. And these were taking it from, I believe, single glazing to sort of, the triple glazing, so significantly more energy efficient. And we're able to get very favorable loan terms for that. We've also seen, of course, the addition of rooftop solar and upgraded siding as well, which again was, much more efficient. There was the sort of the wrap and those things that were added to it to really enhance that as well. One thing to point out here is that periodical upgrades are not covered by this program. So that would include elements such as roofing, water heaters, things that sort of have a expected lifespan. So anything that is seen as an upgrade, and we have a lot of sort of guidance on this. So we will get questions. Roofing is probably a common one that people will ask, is this eligible? And it is unfortunately not, but we do have other elements that of course they can go to as well. So I just included kind of an extract again from one of the forms here, showing the different categories, the different loan amounts, and sort of an extract of the terms there as well. And you can really see kind of the range of what is offered here. There's a lot of different projects that would be eligible. So as far as renewable energy, the program does support the purchase and installation of renewable energy technologies, including rooftop solar. We have seen a few of these applications, and included here is an extract of supporting materials that were included from Full Spectrum Solar for a residential rooftop installation. So there is often overlap with other categories that this may not just be selected on its own. Where it may be bundled in, major home rehab, folks may be putting on an extra floor. There may be more efficient windows being put in, more efficient systems upgrades that are being included, and even rooftop solar. But they will often lean towards the rehab category because, of course, it has the larger maximum loan amount. What we have seen here, though, is leveraging other funds, other tax credit opportunities, and of course, the savings that something like solar can bring sort of to the utility bills as well. So I think that's one of the opportunities here is being able to use some of the other incentives that are available, not just favorable loan terms here from the city, but sort of other, other institutions as well that are available. So as we get into kind of the lessons learned from the project, I think one of the main things that stood out is, of course, we've seen very different market trends, market conditions in the last couple of years. And when financing was cheap, when loans were cheap, then certainly it was a little bit quieter. absolutely, as costs raised, cost of financing went up, we saw a lot more interest. So that 2% has held steady throughout that time, and that just has sort of dictated how many applications that we have seen. Again, the breadth of the projects with finite funding opportunities, it is first come, first served each year. And we did, I think it was in 2023, close applications for 4 or 5 months because we had sort of gone through the funding and didn't want to break over that sort of 250,000 and be behind a little bit on some of that. So opportunity to leverage other funds definitely assist in being able to further that impact and being able to make projects maybe viable for individuals as well. The eligibility requirements have not adjusted with the assessed value increases. So I think the most recent year we had these at 460,000 was kind of the ballpark assessed value. And so, as far as some of the goals of the project, some of the stated goals, it may be an opportunity to look at that, potentially adjust that as well. And we did notice that timing issues can certainly be a challenge for some of the categories, specifically the first-time home buyer and the first-generation home buyer, just with the speed that the market moves. If there's opportunity to potentially help individuals maybe become pre-qualified in order to assist with that, just with how that needs to go through. So finally, just some of the opportunities here. I think partnering with other agencies is absolutely a great way to do that. Using their expertise to administer and evaluate the request, and again, for us to potentially double up on assistance and loan opportunities there to help those dollars go further. We've absolutely looked into getting the word out a little bit more. This program, and I think this is a good opportunity to be doing that today as well. This program often is sort of passed around with word of mouth. And so is there another way that we can do this, work with local realtors, local contractors, that this is an opportunity as well. I mentioned that the city has created some new TID tax increment districts as well. The new project plans for those do include sort of an extension of this program and a broadening of the scope that would actually include some small-scale multifamily housing opportunities. So some of the fourplexes that we see in the city, that maybe could do with some upgrades, still retaining their affordable housing and sort of naturally affordable rent levels, but to be able to maybe assist with some of those improvements that, again, the favorable loan terms could help with. We are looking to do a comprehensive plan update. So certainly, with the housing element of that, it's going to be a key component. So is there other elements that may come out of that? Some more innovative options that we can use. And ultimately, we are running a review of the Renew Monona loan program, sort of discussing that with the CDA, with the city's CDA, and just looking into opportunities to potentially refine the program and continue its evolution moving forward as well. And I'd certainly open it up to questions, and I'll be forwarding this PowerPoint as well, so you can take a look at this in your own time as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very informative. It's a great program. We have a couple of questions in the chat. This is kind of a two-parter, so I'll start with the first part. How much staff time is dedicated to the loan program? Does Monona have a staff person dedicated to this work?
We do not have a dedicated staff person, so it's currently housed in my office. As far as kind of the application materials and processing of that, I do staff the CDA, so there's sort of the natural overlap there. But the city's finance director also takes on sort of a large portion of this post finance and personnel approval. So the signing of the documents, ultimately the cutting of the check, he assists with, as well as the collection of the payments annually as well. So I would say we've sort of refined it fairly well, but I'd say there's some of the opportunities as well that, getting the word out, broadening the program, and potentially looking to expand it. It will take more staff time, and certainly, let's say if we, if the loan amounts were a little smaller, we had more applicants, more applications to keep track of. I think there could be some challenges there with timing and things. So looking to dedicate a little bit more time, absolutely.
Great. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
I do, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Please explain why Monona went from working with a local lender but isn't anymore. Would you recommend that municipalities just starting their affordable housing programs go to the lender route, or is DIY doable for first timers?
I would say it predates my time, but I know it was sort of the program has been going for quite a while, and so initially it was in partnership with a local financial institution, and then as it relaunched probably 4 or 5 years ago, the program, we were unable to sort of partner directly with them to service the loans, and that was why it was done in-house. So I would say this way around works in that we have kind of the formula, we have the forms available. But certainly if there is a way that you can partner with a local bank or a local institution, I think one of the things I often say is we're not a bank specifically. That's not our background. That's not our focus. So I do think some of the processing, some of the checks and balances, I think would certainly be helpful through a financial institution. So if there is somebody you can partner with, I'd suggest that.
Thank you.
I have
Any
a-
other?
I have a quick question, Doug. So, do you have a sense of how many people who, the range of household incomes that are receiving these loans? Yeah.
We do not, because it's not something that we're testing for as part of the process. What I would say is that anecdotally, we've seen a pretty good range of assessed values coming through, and certainly recognizing that 120%, I think, just across Dane County, the median assessed value has increased. So we have certainly seen a range, but some a little closer to the upper bound, as time has gone on. But it's not something that we test for, so we don't have that information.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. I didn't realize how expansive your program was. And then one thing I did, you mentioned that people cannot apply for roofing, but you said there's other areas or other funds that they can apply for roofing, or is that you want them to just go more conventional loan with that?
They would just go more conventional for that, but certainly, one of the things that we do look for during the application process is kind of a full breakdown, and absolutely with the major home rehab, roofing may be a component, but I try and sort of run through that, get a breakdown, and make sure that we're covering eligible project costs and not sort of all of them. But we have seen some coming in that are on the higher end, and they've been able to sort of still receive, say, the a larger loan amount, but maybe it's it's not the full amount. Give the 50% because not everything is eligible.
Right. Well, thank you. That was terrific. That's
Absolutely.
great to know.
Thank you so much. Oh, one more question in the chat. And then we have one for the energy navigator folks. I think maybe Lorraine could answer, but other than that, they're gone, so we could follow up. But Kurt asks, are there various fees associated with recording and servicing the loan, and who pays?
So I would have to check with the city's finance director. I believe recording is done at the Register of Deeds, so I think it's just kind of the regular recording fee. But as far as the servicing, I would have to check with him, so I could look into that and get back to you.
You have a sense of how many you do every year?
Yeah, it varies by year, but I would say probably between 5 and 10 different loan applications. And of course, with the max loan of 75,000, it could be as few as 3 or 4 before the funding is exhausted. But we have seen that real balance, with a few smaller loan amounts that we're able to assist with. And I think that's something we'd be looking at with the possible revisions to the program is. If we are going to be successful getting the word out, sort of, broadening the reach of the program, maybe looking at sort of lowering that max loan amount so that we can help and assist more individuals as well.
Right.
I think you said in 2023 the funds were exhausted. Are they typically exhausted every year, or do you have years where they're not?
I'd say we get close. I'd say probably 3/4, like 75% upwards of the funding is typically exhausted each year. Certainly when financing rates were a little lower, it was quieter, but for the most part, it's between that 75 and 100% of that 250.
Any other questions? All right. I think we lost Lorene, so I'll have to follow up with that other question. Thank you all so much for staying a little bit extra so that Doug could answer some of those questions. Thank you, Doug. That was a great presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks for organizing.
Yeah, of course. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Thank you.